My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Guitarist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.guitarist.com. Today, it's my great pleasure once again to be speaking to a good friend of mine, Mick Michaels, the guitar player from Corners of Sanctuary. And I'd like to congratulate you and your bandmates, Mick, because you guys recently celebrated 10 years as a band. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, this year, 2021, is our 10-year anniversary. We're calling it 10 years and counting anniversary, so we're hoping to keep going as long as we can. But yeah, this is a big year for us. We're pretty excited.
And we got a lot to talk about today. And before we really get into that, just the fact that you guys have been together as a band 10 years, that's quite an accomplishment. And I say that because I know, like me, you're a huge Kiss fan, and I can say one thing that you and your band have in common with Kiss is like you guys have been together, 10 years, as we're saying, and you've just put out this crazy volume of material, very much like when we were growing up and we were Kiss fans, and you'd have like 2 Kiss albums a year. So you
right.
guys are kind of on that trend. So keep it coming.
Yeah, absolutely. At least we're going to try. That's a good. They're a good benchmark, in my opinion, especially in those early years, to try to keep up with the amount of music that they release. So that's something that I'd always wanted to do, and this band has been able to work like that. So it's very exciting.
And let me say, really, especially when you consider current times, with the lockdown and everything and COVID. I mean, first of all, it makes it that much harder for. It's probably been a while since you've done a live show, even like a lot of bands. And there are many bands out there that they're established acts, and they got a lot of them have attitude, which is since we can't get out there and tour right now, we're not going to bother releasing any new music until we can. And I dig the fact that you guys, like I said, and this was pre-COVID when we're talking about your band Corners of Sanctuary. You guys always were working on new material, releasing new stuff constantly. Every time you turn your back, like, didn't they just release something new? So I just got to say, thanks for continuing to have that attitude, because it's great that we, music fans and metalheads at least have stuff to look forward to from, bands like you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Absolutely. Right, we love what we do, and writing music, in my opinion, is something I've been interested in. And I've talked about this before, because we sometimes it's kind of been a mixed feeling. Like, some people kind of complain when we come out with too much music.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, like yourself, like, keep coming with it. And we're not releasing a song a week. Or
no, it just seems like it, but you're always.
Yeah. But again, it's expecting to build this band.
Yeah, you're building the band name, so to speak, or the band brand, and I think as a music fan, you can never really get tired of hearing new music. A couple recent releases come to mind. I don't know about you, Mick, but the new AC/DC album came out, last November, whenever it was. I think it's the best thing they've done since maybe even Back in Black, and that's really saying something,
Yeah, I think it's a great album. I agree with you. I think it sounds great. I think Brian Johnson sounds fantastic. It's a fantastic album.
Yeah, and especially when you consider, what's interesting is Malcolm Young is no longer with us, and he doesn't play a lick on the album, but he was very much involved with writing a lot of the riffs. There's a lot of stuff that he left behind, and even though he doesn't play a lick on the album, I tell you, his presence, just in the writing, is really felt throughout the entire album.
I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about being a Kiss fan. Just last week, I couldn't believe when it was the 45th anniversary of Destroyer. For guys like you and me, grew up on Kiss, that's quite a milestone. When you consider half of the stuff that they still play live is off that one album.
That is cool. That is a great album. It's one that I always go back to. In a sense, for classic Kiss, with the makeup, that is definitely a heavier album.
Yeah.
You put it, in my opinion, it's definitely one of their heavier albums. Not considering Creatures of the Night, but because it's not really classic Kiss.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a heavier album. And like you said, like Detroit Rock City, it's a staple. That's almost one of the songs that I think people quickly gravitate towards when they think of Kiss. Like, there's maybe 3 or 4 songs, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, and I'm talking about releasing new music. I mean, I was curious because I know last time we were talking about Paul Stanley's '78 solo. I know you're a big fan of that, and you're like that's kind of one album really had a huge influence on you growing up. Not just his guitar playing and singing, but the songwriting on that album. And Paul Stanley recently, just today, he has that Soul Station album that came out, which is kind of like him redoing a lot of like Motown stuff, and it's kind of an interesting take on that. I was curious, have you heard any of that stuff? And if so, what are your thoughts on that? On what he's doing on that?
Yeah, I have. I think I've heard 2 songs, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And then I've watched that. They had a little documentary on it, and all. Listen, I think it's great. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Paul Stanley. I follow on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
I'm aware of what's happening. I think it sounds great. I think he's hit another stride.
Yeah.
He's reinvented himself. I mean, at 69 years old, and he's doing that stuff. That's and he's working with some fantastic talent, phenomenal talent.
Yeah.
And to demonstrate that, he did one style, and people kind of cornered him in that. Oh, that's all you could do, and here he's doing something. Well, he did Phantom of the Opera, so he's been able to break that mold. It's just that some people maybe never gave him the credit that he deserved. But I think it's great. I grew up listening to Motown as well. My uncles, Motown and R&B, so it's kind of cool hearing it. You know what I mean? I think it's really cool.
It's kind of interesting because he's now put out like 3 official solo releases, throughout his entire career. The first being the '78, the last one was Live to Win. That was a lot more kind of hard rock and metal, a lot more, I'd say, towards metal. And then this one is like kind of really different take. So you could put on any one of those 3 solo releases, and the cool thing about it, each album kind of really stands out on its own for the fact that they are all 3 so different.
Yeah, I agree. I'll tell you, when I first heard his second solo, Live to Win, at first I wasn't sure if I liked it because he was doing, like, he was singing, talking type of thing.
Yeah.
He was in that kind of at that time period. But then the more I heard it, the more I liked it. Like the more it started to really, I started picking up where he was going, what he was doing with it. I'm still a huge fan of his first solo album.
Yeah.
I think that's does he? I don't know. Does he consider what he's doing with Soul Station as a solo project or is it a group?
I think he probably considers more of a group, but a lot of people, I'm just saying, I guess that's my perspective, in a sense it's a solo project, I guess in the sense that it's outside of Kiss. And that's kind of one sad statement I recently heard Paul Stanley reference is that he doesn't think, he doesn't see a need for another new Kiss album. And I guess there's some truth to that because, I mean, these guys are getting up there in age. And I think just the body of, if this really is a farewell tour and they never do anything like as far as a new record, I think they got a great catalog of music, but they could just, kind of retire on that. So I kind of get it. But, yeah, as a fan, I wish there was maybe one more Kiss album in them. But I guess, Soul Station will suffice, I guess, for now,
Yeah, no, I can understand where he's coming from, especially with the milestones that they have made in their career. I mean, like you said, they have a huge catalog, and they have a lot of hits in the sense that people know these songs, and when you go to the shows, the songs that they play, everybody knows.
Oh yeah,
and it's they're not throwing in some obscure thing. But even, again, for a Kiss fan, even those obscure ones you're kind of hoping for once in a while. But,
yeah,
I can see why, and especially, I've read interviews with Gene and even with Paul early on that, with the album sales not being the way that they were, I can understand why they're not going to invest the time or money, but I wouldn't put it past them if they come out with a couple new songs once in a while. I don't see the band disappearing. I think they're not just going to tour like they would. I think maybe they'll do a couple one-off shows a year or every couple of years. But I think you're still going to see a lot of Kiss product and that Kiss brand out there.
I'm with you there. And before we get into the main topic for today, the main part of the interview, I want to also ask you: are you at all an Alice Cooper fan?
Yes and no. I'm not a real deep Alice Cooper fan, but I do like as a Kiss fan, I know the relationship that Kiss and Alice Cooper had in the 70s, things like that. But I was never a really huge fan of them.
Okay. Well, in any event, so what we're going to really get into today is, like I said, last time I talked to you, talked about the Paul Stanley 78 solo. For anybody who doesn't know, Mick Michaels, we're talking to today from Corners of Sanctuary. He's a huge Kiss fan, and that's one thing me and him have in common. And so today, what we're going to be talking about is 2021. Mick, interestingly enough, marks the 40th anniversary of the Music from the Elder album, and I'm sure this is going to be an interesting conversation for all kinds of reasons. But I posted something about a week ago, but I was really surprised that kind of saying exactly what I just said. Hey, this is the 40th anniversary of Music from Elder. I'd love to hear what some of you folks think of that album. And usually when you talk to people, you get like a 50-50 kind of divide where people either really love that album or they really hate it. I was kind of surprised. I mean, believe it or not, I got over this one post got over 600 and something people responding, and I was surprised how many people were saying, you know what, 40 years later, I'm really digging the album, and I'm like, wow, I had no idea that many people were loving it. So I guess the obvious question is, what as a Kiss fan, what did you think, or what do you currently think of Music from the Elder and the fact that, hey, the album's now been out 40 years?
Well, I think that's awesome that it's been out that long. At the same time, I can't believe 40 years has passed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I never had a problem with the album. I thought it was a cool album.
Yeah.
Did I think it was different than other Kiss albums?
Course.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, that's a given, right? That's obvious. And so because of that, then we don't even have to bring it up anymore. But as the music is, I think it was a great album. I think conceptually they were really trying for something. Did they pull it all together? Maybe not.
Yeah.
And being that the band was not, as a whole, was not 100% on board with, Ace wasn't really on board with stuff, and I think that may have derailed some of the hopes of getting that album more cohesive.
Oh yeah.
But I think I mean, listen, Under the Rose is probably the best song on the album because it's just an amazing song. Like if you took the Kiss label off it and they just released it under some other name, I think most people would have loved the album. They wouldn't even have thought twice.
It's
about the content or the storyline or the disjointedness of the track listing. But I mean, listen, what they were, I'm Just a Boy and All Night. They were different styles of singing for Paul. And I remember reading. This was a number of years ago about the Elder because I had gotten some the early demos. I was interested in really seeing how progression of development and arrangements. Anyway, I read an article, and I've never been able to find it again, about one of the engineers that were in the studio, and they complained about Paul not really being a great singer, and he was struggling to do this album vocally. And I'm saying to myself, I don't see it or hear it. Rather, I think that if he was struggling, it's because it was a completely different style. For some of the things that he was doing. And you could see that, when they did that Friday nights
special,
performance, and, going from high falsetto to his normal voice, that's something difficult to do. I mean, at that time, the only person that I felt that was doing it at a super high level was, Barry Gibb. He had mastered.
Oh, yeah, he mastered it. He was a master.
Yeah. But it takes a toll on your voice. I mean, and because I seen Barry Gibb a few years ago, he came into the Philadelphia area, and his falsetto was nowhere it was in that late 70s era because it really takes a toll on it. So I think that not having the training for it or the experience to do that, it may have made it a little difficult. But do I think that he didn't sing well on the album? No, not at all.
Yeah,
I think it's a really cool album.
I think it was a disjointed effort for many reasons. I mean, I think part of the problem was you take a guy like Bob Ezrin and you see what they did on Destroyer previously, and he's the guy that produced all those great Alice Cooper albums, and so they think, hey, let's try to work with Bob again. And what people forget is before Music from the Elder came out, the latest thing Bob Ezrin had done at that point was Pink Floyd's album The Wall. And I'd also been reading stuff like Paul and Gene were saying, oh, look at what Bob did with Pink Floyd. Let's try to do an album like that. That was the goal, okay? And obviously they did not achieve it, obviously. And then plus the fact that even Bob Ezrin has said in interviews since that he was really strung on cocaine, and he's like, I think that's why the album ended up the way. And like you're talking as a Kiss fan, I've heard like many of these Kiss demos at the time. They were thinking of putting on that songs like Nowhere to Run. That eventually ended up like on Killers and that. But I think if they would have done more stuff like that. I also heard this song that eventually ended up on Asylum in '85 called Love's a Deadly Weapon. They were doing stuff like that, and even like It's My Life. There's demos from back then. If they'd done an album stuff like that, I think it would more of in the hard rock vein. But that's part of a reason people like, especially after Dynasty and MS. Oh, okay, so this is what they're doing now. And then a lot of people didn't like the fact, kind of like with Metallica. It's a silly thing. Oh, Gene and Paul, they cut their hair. They don't have long hair anymore. They look different. Oh, there's a different drummer in the band.
Yeah. I mean, at that time in '81, music was definitely changing here in the States. We were starting to get an influx of, it was like a pop punk type of British thing that was starting to happen. There was some of that San Francisco sound coming out. Journey was doing real good. You still had, the Babies and things like that. So you had some of that kind of stuff. So I think that the '70s era was being
replaced.
Replaced. And so I think whether people kind of realized it or not, they were just kind of pushing things away. So Kiss represented the '70s, just like listen, when they had that No More Disco thing, the Bee Gees were the center of that, and they really weren't in the center of disco. They just kind of accidentally fell
into it. Yeah.
So I think Kiss just was kind of part of that, and then this album was just enough to kind of tip people to that other side because it was so different for them at the time.
Yeah, and I had a few more questions regarding the Elder. Now, as a Kiss fan, like, how shocked were you, like, to hear the song "World Without Heroes"? Like, oh, the Demon, he's doing a ballad. Gene is singing a ballad, or I don't know if you've seen the music video, and he had that, like, a teardrop from his eye.
Yeah.
A lot of people made a big deal about that. I'm like, hey, well, he's doing a different style, now.
Yeah, well, when I heard the song, and I remember there was a lot of talk about it, I thought it was a cool song. I mean, again, like, I guess where I was, the people that I was hanging with and associating with, they didn't really, I don't think there was like, oh, this is different for Kiss. They're doing like a ballad, and Gene's singing, and it's kind of cool, and And I remember seeing them perform it on Solid Gold.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so, I mean, but it was, again, like, for me, it was like, it was Kiss, so it was just cool.
See,
I didn't know the difference. Maybe I was stupid. I don't know. But, like, whatever they were doing was cool to me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I'm one of those Kiss fans that, I'll tell you my experience with Elder, that pretty much like you, like anything Kiss ever did, I was a fan of. And I remember for a time where the Elder eventually was, like, out of print. You couldn't get it. And it became almost like this legendary, the myth of it was so huge at the time. I remember, like, and I was like, one day I'm going to get that album. And then sure enough, they reissued it, eventually. And it's like, oh, okay, so it's not that great of an album, but you know what? It's not that bad either. I mean, I kind of agree with what Gene and Paul say, which is, like kind of like what you're saying. If they called it anything else but Kiss, it's maybe not a great Kiss album, but the songs aren't that bad either. I mean, there's really not a stinker. But then when you kind of get into the weeds of the album, like, okay, that was the first Eric Carr Kiss album, and half the drum tracks he's not even featured on. They bring in other drummers. You're kind of like, well, why did they do that? They had this great drummer.
Right.
Yeah. And
it could have been for, I mean, why that happened, I don't know.
Yeah, personally.
Kiss has been notorious for whether it's a producer choice or, bringing in those players and so on and so forth. So who knows? I think the only thing that really bugs me about, especially with Gene and Paul, is that they seldomly acknowledge the album. And I think that they put it out, whether it was a hit or not. I think that because they disowned it so quickly, I think that kind of created that persona of the album that it sucked worse than it did. Oh, the musicians themselves, the artists themselves have disowned it. They don't want to talk about it and all. Listen, what was it? You know, I mean, Kiss Meets a Phantom of the Park was a bigger stinker in my opinion. And it made them look a little more goofy, like clowns. And though, listen, and I enjoyed that too, watching it as a kid. I looked forward to it, and I've seen it, you know, maybe a dozen times since then, and I've enjoyed it each time, and I get a kick out of it. But again, it's Kiss. I could watch that train wreck 1,000 times. It's still Kiss.
And I think why I'm with you that, you know, you should kind of be proud of anything you ever put out, even if it wasn't the best selling thing. But see, like, let's take it if that album had been like number one, okay? Do you think they would be disowning it? No, it's because like maybe Paul, when they bring it up in an interview, doesn't want to talk about, oh, you know, that's the worst selling Kiss album. No, let's talk about something else. But I even see bands like Motley Crue doing that, like, you know, they're going to go on the stadium tour, and I've seen they're going to do some kind of tour, like to celebrate the band's 40th anniversary, and they're having all these. They show like I've seen a picture like where they show all the albums, but they don't include the one that Corabi. You know, they kind of want to forget about the one they did with Corabi, or the new Tattoo album. That was the one that didn't feature Tommy Lee, and they had Randy Castillo on the drums. And I'm kind of thinking like you, but even, you know, especially those two Crew albums, they're not bad albums if you listen to them. But I'm like, you know, why you want to just forget about those two albums just because they're, you know, didn't sell too well? A lot of people like those albums, you know, and I kind of agree with you, Mick, that they should kind of say, well, that's part of a catalog. You either like it or you don't, you know?
Right, I agree, and I just think that they spent too long
dissing it.
Dissing it. I guess that's a great way of putting it. Too long dissing. And there really is, listen, even if they did, you know, again, they performed songs on shows during, it was a small, you know, whatever, they did a video, whatever the case may be. So they definitely felt strong enough that, hey, we're going to move forward with it. And I think that as they were building their, rebuilding their reputation in the 80s, I think they could have slipped in stuff like that and people would have loved it just the same.
I think the final time they attempted something like that, which I'm glad they did, was when they did, in 95, when they recorded Kiss Unplugged. They got A World Without Heroes on there, and it's unplugged and everything, but they stayed pretty true to the original song, but it's, you know, it's a little more of a, they kind of rocked it up just a little bit for Unplugged, and I was glad to see that they pulled that one out of their hat one more time, you know.
And you know, and that's, I know that, I think they've done stuff, I've seen clips that they've done parts of stuff on the cruises, but then some other bands that they've had on there have done stuff from the, I don't know. Where, you know, it's their decision. I think
of course.
They could really, like, if it's all about the fans, there are plenty of fans that want to hear the stuff. I really do. And I know Paul's got this thing, you know, that they don't want to do obscure tracks or deep cuts. There's a reason they're called deep cuts and all that. But again, they were their songwriters. I mean, it's their creation, so why not get it out there?
Yeah, you know,
you know.
And one final point on that is, like, I was curious, I'm sure as a Kiss fan, do you happen to know that Paul Stanley was the one that wrote God of Thunder? And there's a demo out there, especially if you have the Kiss box set. I think it's on there where Paul was singing the original vocal, and when they went to do it for Destroyer, Bob Ezrin was on. You know, Paul, we're gonna have Gene. That's a Gene song, and I'm like, how ingenious, you know? Because who knows? But because that's the way we've heard the song all these years, and that's what Gene Simmons became, the God of Thunder. Wow.
Right. Well, it definitely set a standard for up even further.
Yeah.
I like Paul's version of it.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's so cool. I know he's high in there, but again, when I first heard it, I was like, man, this is really cool. It's got a different kind of groove to it. See, again, I'm a Paul Stanley fan. I enjoy his vocals, and I gravitate more to his songs that way. But I thought it was, you know, but I guess...
What's interesting if you hear that Paul...
The whole thing with I don't think the song in the beginning... Because of Gene's persona and what people thought it, you know, circled around. So.
What's interesting is if you hear the Paul vocal, what makes it so cool is, like, if you're hearing that for the first time, you would dig it, I think, because that's not a typical Paul song. That's not what you would like when they did Carnival of Souls, which people call kind of their grunge album. That was the final album with Bruce Kulick. A lot of the Paul songs are a lot kind of a lot heavier on that album, and a lot of the Gene songs are kind of more poppy, which is kind of an alternate take what they typically do. But that's what again makes those songs so cool, because you take a song like Jungle off Carnival of Souls. That's not a typical Paul Stanley tune, but you get off on him kind of doing his screen thing, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And now getting in, we're going to get into a little bit about what you're currently up to now. Reason I contacted you last week about doing the interview, I seen you're involved in a couple projects. One of them is called Starlight, which I understand is kind of just a song you played on. So you want to talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah, well, actually, so it's a side project. It was really six years in the making. I had started writing some material back in 2014. It wasn't Corners of Sanctuary material.
Yeah.
There was the thought of, hey, maybe I'll do a little solo thing, but I want to do something different. I want to do something that has almost like 70s vibe to it, maybe a little bit of groove, not necessarily heavy metal. So I started working on the material. You know, it was kind of like I was piecemealing it as I was doing other stuff with Corners of Sanctuary. And I got a handful of songs together, and a friend of mine who's also I look at as a mentor had said, you know, why don't you just do it on your own? Do a solo thing and try singing. I'm not really a singer, so I was like, I hemmed and hawed about it. I'm like, I don't know. So I started putting everything together. I laid down scratch vocals. I did the bass, keyboard. I was programming some drums and all. And I was like, hey, you know, this is kind of cool. It's kind of quirky, but there's something missing.
Yeah.
So I sat on it for a while because Corners was getting pretty busy at that time. By 2015, we were getting ready to. We were working on Metal Machine and stuff like that. So it was just a lot going on. So you know, I mean, there was never a hurry up. I got to get this done type of
something
thing.
to do for fun. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and it was just kind of like me working on my songwriting in another aspect on the arena. So I kept going back to it. You know, I'd be tailoring some pieces up. And finally, I said to our drummer, Mad T, I said, listen, man, how about if I send you these tracks? See what you can do. Maybe we'll get some, you know, I think we need some, like, life into these things. I don't think the drum machine's going to do it. So I said, okay, you know. So I left it, I gave him the stuff, and then, you know, we kind of piecemealed it in the studio as we could. And, you know, and I kept mixing the songs. This is now with my vocals on it. And I'm like, you know, they're okay, but they're okay. And I just would leave them there, and I talked to different singers over the time saying, hey, would you be interested in maybe doing this? And, you know, we talked. We never really got any fun. So I had decided in 2019, I was like, I got to do something. I got to get it off the plate. So RAR rep, Billy, introduced me to a young singer. Her name's Taryn Dorothy. She plays violin too. So I wanted somebody that was kind of unknown, and I wanted to go that different quirky type of sound, but you know, something that kind of felt like we were in like a nightclub and just having, you know, just kind of jamming. So we did a couple demo tapes to see if, you know, we get something to work out. And I thought, hey man, this is something different, and that's where we went.
And so is this going to be like you're going to have? Is this just one track right now, or are there going to be other tracks at full length CD, or what's the plan for this?
Well, there's an EP. It's just digital right now.
Okay.
It came out on Exquisite Noise Records. It's just 4 songs. And one of the songs I actually do sing on.
Oh, wow.
Everybody kind of just said, hey, listen, this one really works. Why don't you give it a shot, you know, step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So, you know what I mean? This may be my elder. I don't know what it is, but I stand behind it. I don't make claims that I'm a singer.
Yeah.
I don't really make claims that I'm that great of a guitar player either, but I do the best that I can, and it seemed to get a good response so far. And you know, I'm pretty excited about it.
That's all you can do now. Now let me ask you, in reference to the fact that this is so different. I mean, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of Corners of Sanctuary fans just kind of checking this out because you're involved with it, and And but how cool is it for you that like if somebody knowing nothing about what you do with COS kind of just discovers this, and then maybe they through this they discover, oh, okay, he has this other band over here, let's go check that out.
Well, to me, I think that's really cool. You know, I look at myself. I try to look at myself as a songwriter that just so happens to play guitar.
Yeah.
So I want to really get better at songwriting, and I want to not just one genre of it, because sometimes even with the Corner Sanctuary, we kind of slip in some other
types of stuff.
Types of stuff because we have a diverse palette of interest, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you this: the stuff from Starlight, there is a lot of influence, and I we'll bring it back to Kiss of Paul's '78 album.
Wow.
Some arrangement ideas and things that the guitars, him and Bob did with the guitars, and just some lead work, solo work ideas that I felt I got inspired from that album. Because for me, if I was to do a solo album, I wanted to be something like the '78 Paul Stanley solo album.
And one of the greatest Kiss songs I think they ever did, especially like Paul and Ace as a guitar team, is you go all the way back to Dress to Kill. Listen to what they did on the song Rock Bottom. I'm just talking about the intro, where Paul Stanley's doing a lot of the lead work, but they kind of double tag team each other, and then the song all of a sudden goes from intro and it goes in with a big kick,
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and so like you said, you've never considered yourself much of a singer, but like doing this, did it kind of give you like a new appreciation? I'm no David Lee Roth, but hey, if I ever wanted to do this, I got a decent enough voice that it's not as bad as I thought. Or what was your experience with that?
There's definitely I have to sing in a certain key. Otherwise, it doesn't work for me. But I have over the years I've done studio backing vocals for Corners of Sanctuary and some other bands. I usually have myself further back because I'm not that great of a singer. But I do have an ability. I can mimic things a short period of time. But I'm definitely wouldn't consider myself a lead person, and I would have to write strictly in a certain key without any experimentation. So I don't know. I do lay down scratch vocals when I'm writing songs for Kaz. I'll lay stuff down. Because it's convenient. It's I'm already there. I'm in the mix, and while the idea is fresh, I better get it down. So there's a small group of individuals that have been tortured with my voice over the years. But this was an opportunity for me to grow as a songwriter and take a chance as an artist and see what happens. So we'll see. I think actually the next single that releases, and I think it releases in April, is going to be the track that I sing. So
interesting.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and now let me ask you, Mick, as a songwriter, like when you're writing songs for COS, I imagine you're writing with a singer in the band in mind. Now, like the fact that you can kind of scat vocal when you're recording, these demos for Starlight, I was kind of curious. Do you specifically write with yourself in mind, since this is a song you're writing, or you try to envision? Well, I'm going to see if I can get another singer to do this, and but pretty much whoever's going to end up singing it, and I'm going to. Does it affect it any? Like when you finally decide who was going to sing the songs? Did you have that particular person in mind, or was it kind of just for write the song first and then we'll just worry about getting a singer later? What was that process like?
Well, depending on the time, it's a little bit of both, right? I've gotten really good at metal rapping. I sing on the beat, that type of thing. So a lot of my scratch vocals are for placement, timing, flow, but not a lot of, I leave that up to the singer. I want their style to come. But there are songs that I have written for specific singers, knowing their style, and with working with Frankie Cross, I'm very familiar with working with him. So I can hear things do, because I'm familiar with being in the studio
Yeah.
with him, and I go, okay, I want to write it so this works for him. And there are certain inflections that if I hear in my head, saying I really can hear the vocals doing this or doing that, and I'll do that. I'll do the best that I can, the best rendition I can on the scratch tape.
Yeah.
And then when we're in the studio or they're listening to the demo, I walk them through it. I explain to them. I said, this is based on whatever. And I'd say about 90% of those little pieces we're able to kind of tailor into the vocalist that we're using. Yeah.
Yeah, because when your publicist sent me like a little press release on Starlight, and I was checking out the current single, and I thought, okay, this sounds really different from what he's known for doing, but it's at the same time it's very cool. I dig it, and because a lot of the stuff I listen to, even Kiss and stuff that we grew up on. I mean, a lot of the bands that I think really have some to say. The main ingredient is the songwriting. I mean, you'll hear people always kind of knocking Gene and Paul, saying, Kiss, they're not the world's greatest musicians, but I'll tell you what, they're the world's greatest songwriters. I mean, you listen to any Kiss song. I mean, most of the stuff's been played on the radio for the last 50 plus years, and the fact that people are still listening to their stuff, that tells me, maybe they may not be the world's greatest musicians, but they've got something to say, and they know how to say it. I mean, because again, just all the Kiss songs. I mean, Van Halen, Motley Crue, any of these great bands we grew up on. That's the one thing they all have in common: great songwriting.
Yeah, listen, I've heard that too over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, and they'll admit it, and maybe they admit it now.
Yeah.
It's kind of the cool rock star thing to say.
Yeah.
Even Paul just recently in one of his interviews about Destroyer, said that we weren't that great of musicians, but they were the biggest band in the world at the time. So, I get all that. But listen, it's not about being the greatest musician in the world.
Yeah.
That's just another plug that people want to do to kind of poke it when they're trying to knock you down. I mean, really, most songs are written in C and D and G, 3 chords. That's all you need is 3 chords, right? Yeah. And you can write some of the hottest songs because it's about what catches people's emotion, like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of fire, intensity, and emotion in their music. It didn't have to be overcomplicated because in reality, why is popular music so popular? Because it's not overcomplicated.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
It's repetitive. It's part of the human condition of how people respond. So, I mean, listen, I love progressive metal.
Yeah.
I really do. These guys are phenomenal, but I can only listen to it for a short amount of time. I'm there, and a small percentage of people are the people that can listen to it nonstop for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
But not everybody, right?
Yeah.
And then you start getting into smaller groups. So, whether they were good musicians or not is besides the point.
Yeah.
And who looked at it like that? I mean, you either liked what they did or they didn't. You didn't like what they did. And the fact that they're still here, enough people liked what they did. So,
So as Kiss fans, we're in good company. But just let anybody know listening to this, this is part 1 of a 2-part interview Mick's going to be doing with us. Next time around, we're going to be, Mick recently shared with me that his all-time favorite Judas Priest album is Stained Glass, and so we'll be getting a lot more into that next time around. But I bring it up because you're mentioning that you're into progressive rock, and I recently, for the first time, got a chance, Mick, to hear the very first Priest album, Rock-a-Rolla, which is kind of a very different Priest album for many reasons, because for one, a lot of the songs on that album were written by Al Atkins, who was a vocalist prior to Rob Halford joining the band. So Rob was doing vocals for a lot of songs that some other singer wrote, and a lot of the stuff, I don't know if you've ever heard it, but has a very progressive rock sound on that very first Judas Priest album. There's one song on there that's I think is like into 3 different parts, like 8 or 9 minutes long. I was curious if you've ever had a chance to hear that Rock-a-Rolla album and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I've heard it. I'm a Priest fan from start to finish.
Wow.
I love all their albums.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody last night regarding Judas Priest. Judas Priest, every album is different.
Yeah.
Right? Because you could see the progression of the band.
Yeah.
And at that time, that was the sound. That was where the music was going. But those songs, in their own right, at that time, are very heavy. even for progressive.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? They're not just.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's not just like long drawn out, like it's like a jam session. But progressive means there's multiple. It's not just like A B
Yeah, yeah.
C A B, that type of thing. And there's some really good stuff there, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But each one of their albums, being that they are different, but across their entire catalog, you can tell it's Judas Priest.
Oh, yeah.
There's a stamp on it, sound-wise.
And this is what I was getting ready to say. For anybody who hasn't heard that, the very first album by Judas Priest, Rockarola, I'm sure you've heard some of the stuff on it, but I just, if you get a chance, you can even go on YouTube and you can just check out the entire album. And what's cool about that is, like I said, I agree with what you're saying. Like, pretty much you listen to any Priest album and it sounds like Judas Priest. Now, that being the very first Priest album, though, what's interesting is there are elements of like progressive rock, like I was saying, and then you can hear the potential in what was in Judas Priest at that time. You could hear what was in the band. You could kind of hear in that music the band becoming the metal legends that they would go on to become. So, but like if you listen to Rockarola, like if you think of Judas Priest as like Living After Midnight or Painkiller, you go back and you listen to that very first album, you can really see the potential that was in that band when they were really still starving and hungry and just hungry to make it. And I love to do that sometimes, go back and check out the very first thing a band did, and you might see kind of that's where they came from and look at where they became or where they went on to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like, listen, I think especially bands that have been around that long.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a maturation period that they're kind of starting to gel, and then their experiences being on the road and all that start to formulate how they're going to start creating music from that point forward. So, and after a while, other things kind of get in the way, and then they find their way again, hopefully. But I think, listen, I don't think that there's in my opinion, I don't think that there's a bad Judas Priest. Are there some songs that may or may not be like some top-notch songs? Yeah, there are. I mean, not every song's going to be hit out of the park. Yeah. But I think those first three albums of Judas Priest, Rock, Stay in Class, and Sin After Sin, they're very, each one's a little heavier, but the progressiveness is definitely in there. I mean, even Stay in Class can be considered a progressive album. But I think it's all good stuff. I love that. There are albums that I go back to when I got a question about something, like saying, "Well, how did they do it then?" And if they were able to achieve it then I have to figure out a way that I can achieve it right now. And whether it's sound, production element, or even in songwriting, right? And it's like going to your textbook and figuring out what's the answer. Well, it's right there in your view.
Yeah. And here's a little Judas Priest trivia for you. And I'm not sure why this is, but they have another album that they actually changed the title. I think it was originally Killing Machine, and then it later became known as Hell Bent for Leather.
Right, it was Hell Bent for Leather here in the U.S. because of something that happened here in the U.S. and they didn't want to. They had for Point of Entry. Oh, okay. There was a UK cover and there was the US cover. They had two different covers, and that was kind of a thing that they did both in the music industry and even it would retitle a movie if it went overseas or came over here. I think even Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was retitled when it went to France and Spain and all.
I think they called it Attack of the Phantoms or something like that.
Yeah, Attack of the you're absolutely right.
And then also I'd read on that not only did they change the title, but they added like different songs into the mix and were in the original U.S. version. So that's kind of interesting when they do that. Now, Mick, the other interesting thing about you and what you do is very much like Paul Stanley in your band. You're one of the principal songwriters. So and you're a very gifted guitar player in your own right. And my point being is very much like Paul Stanley. You're not one of those guys that overplays. I mean, you kind of play more for the song, and I think that's why everything your band does it really stands the test of time, because like you're not one of those guys that just on every song you're gonna shred and you do more. You're one of those players that more is about the song, and I think that's why your music stands the test of time. You know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, as a band, we had come to an agreement that the song was the most important thing. The music was the most important thing above any one player.
Yeah, yeah.
That has, I mean, if you follow the band over the past 10 years, we've had lineup changes.
Yeah.
And we've had some difficult times with certain members that want to showboat or overplay and it's, to me, that's just not what the song. And I know for some bands that works great, but it doesn't work well with our culture here in the band. I don't look to overplay. I mean, if a song doesn't need a heavy lead or a 6-7 minute lead, then I don't do it. I mean, the song, it's kind of like the gold in Pirates of the Caribbean. It calls to you. The song lets you know what it needs, and if you're forcing it, in my opinion, if you're forcing I gotta have this part in there for whatever reason, then you're not doing it for the song. You're doing it for the individual.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not what a band is.
I mean, talking again as a Kiss fan, because that's a lot of my reference point. Vinnie Vincent, interesting guy, very amazing player. Like of the solo stuff he did, I love the first Vinnie Vincent Invasion album. I mean, him and Robert Fleischman, I think they had a great chemistry together. He was a great writer, and I think if he'd done more stuff that like was on the first album, it's a lot of overplaying, but great songwriting. And even when they wrote stuff for Revenge, they tried to work with Vinny again, and the guy's ego or whatever. And I read like Paul Stanley's book where he's saying on the Look It Up tour, like there was one instant where Vinny was just overplaying everybody on the stage, and Paul gave him like a dirty look, like, "Hey, dude, it's a band," play.
Right.
And again, it's just one of those guys had the ability. He was a great songwriter, and he could have gone much farther, but his ego got in the way. Sadly,
again, I don't. If it was his ego, that was the thing. Some people are self-destructive. Artists are known for that.
Yeah.
They self-sabotage for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I've met plenty of them. I mean, we're all guilty of kind of maybe sometimes the passion gets so crazy.
Yeah.
Lose sight of stuff. So I don't know, but I agree with you. That first Vinnie Vincent album, I mean, he's a great player.
Oh yeah, no denying.
He knows songwriting. He knows the hooks and stuff like that. But as a human being, it seems there's enough enough stories stacked against him that people just don't want to work with him.
Yeah, very very sad. And I bring that up only up because like I was saying, you probably Mick Michaels was one constant in Corner of the Sanctuary for the last 10 years. You write a lot of his stuff, and my point being, like, if you were to ever, let's say, leave a band and say, okay, you guys want to carry on without me, that's fine. The band would sound so drastically different, and it's not just talk about Mick Michaels, but anybody in the band. I mean, I believe, like you were saying, everybody in the band kind of brings a different influence into the band, and so you replace any one of those members, it's going to sound very different. But like if you were to ever leave, because you're the one guy that's been there really from the beginning, it would sound drastically different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's when David Lee Roth left Van Halen and Sammy came in, it was still Van Halen. It still had that Van Halen feel, but it was a different feel of the Van Halen feel, right? Yeah. I mean, it's been argued, was it just as good? Yeah. I think Sammy did a fantastic.
Oh yeah.
I was a big fan. Dave. It was different eras, but you could still tell it was Van Halen, but it was different. And I agree with you. Things would change. But if it changes, if the music is still
good,
good and of a level, because I'll tell you, the stuff that they did with Sammy, there was no stopping them. So they were doing something right.
Well, see, here's the thing. Probably like me, like you were a Van Halen fan from early on, and you gotta love Dave because he was the original. Now, I will say with Dave, there's a lot of if you check out the lyrics, like even I was recently reading where Alex Van Halen said Dave is more of a poet. A lot of his stuff is kind of nonsensical lyrics, but they're cool to listen to. They're cool to kind of say, oh, what the hell is he talking about? But then Sammy, sometimes as a lyricist, he goes really deep with his lyrics. And if you listen to you know, so they write like from two different approaches, but it works. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So and music, it helped reflect some of that, right?
Yeah.
Their styles were able to either work themselves or work around the music that was given, because really, you know, it was still the same trio pumping the music out. Now the other difference is they were able to do more keyboards with Sammy, and Sammy played guitar too. I mean, accomplished quality, top-notch guitar player. You know, one was a crooner, one was really a singer. I mean, so you could the differences or whatever could go on and on. But, regardless of what era, they both were at the top of their game.
I'm with you. I'm with you there, Mick. I mean, you asked me like, what's my favorite era? I tell you, I love it all. I mean, I lean maybe more towards the Dave era, only because that was the starting point for me. But I love it all, you know. And then we know you're a Kiss fan, and you're into Judas Priest. I was curious, much of a Maiden fan?
I am a Maiden fan. I was never a huge Maiden fan.
Okay.
I know that may get me into trouble.
No.
But I mean, with some people. But listen, I was definitely was an early Maiden fan. And then I kind of tailored off late '80s.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I started going elsewhere, and and I was really involved in the things that I was doing. So
of course. Yeah.
It's just kind of thing.
The reason I bring it up is I was curious. What are your thoughts about Maiden being nominated for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Do you think they'll get in, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's cool. I mean, they well deserved. I mean, listen, they helped propel this genre, especially in the '80s, to soaring heights, and they were a band that proved that they could get a world exposure without having any radio play. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. I hope they do. But as quirky as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame seems to be, I mean, Judas Priest was up twice, and who knows? I know there's some debate about like who should, like, if they are, who's going to be there. Like Paul Stanley should be there, the first guitar player,
of course,
but not the other guitar player, but not
Blaze Bailey, because he only played on 2 albums. Yeah, I mean that's crazy. But and then I guess the final thing I want to ask you about, Mick, today is you have another project, Here and Now, and I hear that's more kind of a collaborative effort among you and some other musicians. So talk a little bit about that.
It's a multi-artist collaboration. We had put it together last year in the early stages of the lockdown, COVID happening. Keep It Metal Promotions, reached out to me and said, "Listen, would you be interested in writing a song? And we'll get some artists together from different places and see if we can get something going." Wow. I said, "Yeah, listen, I'll be more than happy to do it. It's probably going to be people are under lockdown, so we're going to have to take what we get if we can get it, right?" Yeah. So we released a song last May called "No Road to Ruin." And we were able to raise some awareness and some donations for some people that were affected initially by the pandemic. And then there was talk by end of summer, hey, they wanted to do a second,
single
project. Yeah. And we're like, I was like, I'm definitely on board. Just let me know. Well, one thing led to another. And some things took longer than it should have. But by the end of the year, around the holiday, we started putting stuff together. A song was written. And at the time, they were trying to get the Safe Stages Act passed.
Yeah.
Help, venues and states to get them some financial assistance, during these hard times.
Oh, wow.
So that was going to be the goal. And so we've gotten a number of artists together. We had some artists on board who had to, respectfully bail out after they had started the project. But the project is full effect. The song releases in April. It's called "Let's Rock the Stage."
Oh, okay.
It's going to be releasing on RFL Records.
Oh, wow.
It's in post production right now. It's being mastered by Bill Matoyer out in LA.
Oh, cool.
Bill's worked with Slayer and
Oh, wow.
Armored Saint and Body Count and Wasp and
Wow.
Face Warning, and the list goes on.
Yeah.
He helped pretty much get Metal Blade Records together back in the '80s. So
Oh.
he's definitely
He's paid his
we got
dues.
some really-
Yeah.
He's paid his dues for sure. He's definitely been a pioneer in the metal scene. So we got some really cool. We got Stu Marshall from Death Dealer.
Oh, wow.
We got Steve Stein from Guitar Zoom. We have my band's involved, Corners of Sanctuary. I did get Taryn from Starlight. She's on it. She's going to be singing. We got
cool.
Brian Oz from Blackened to Earth. We got Ed Mishke from Veronica V.
Wow.
Freeman. Yeah, so there's some really cool artists on there. We're excited about it. We really are. And we're looking forward to release. So.
Well, yeah, we'll have to talk more about that when it comes out. But let me ask you, any plans that you'll be doing a music video for that track?
For which one?
The one.
Our Light?
No,
For that side?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I know that because of the lockdown last time, they just did a lyric video.
Oh, cool.
I don't know about that yet.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see. But that's the final question for you today. As far as I was going to ask, how has the lockdown affected you? I mean, I know right before you guys had done a tour of the UK, and are you hearing anything about maybe when you'll be able to start touring again, or you're like a lot of us, you just don't know right now?
Yeah, a lot of it's up in the air. We've been doing a lot of online streaming events, which is cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're keeping the name out there. It keeps us active. So we're doing that. We're taking advantage of that avenue because it's
available.
Popular
Yeah.
right now. Yeah, it's stable. It's safe. We are looking. We actually do have a live show that we're doing a metal fest.
Cool.
Outside of Philadelphia here for autism on April 24th.
Oh, that's cool.
As far as I know, it's a go. So we've signed on for it. There's not a lot happening right now, at least in our area.
Yeah.
We were supposed to go back to the UK this past February. Of course, that's not happening.
Yeah.
We were then trying to push it off to September, but we just can't make any definite. So we may be doing a couple one-offs here and there throughout the rest of this year, and we'll have to just wait to see what 2022 will allow us to do. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep writing, and we're going to have we released Blood and Steel, our Volume 1 EP last week.
Oh, wow.
Volume 2 of the EP series will release in July, and then we're going to have something in the fall as well. And all this is part of our original goal to kind of commemorate 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And so we're just going to keep it going, keep writing, see what happens. If with any luck, we'll be able to finish up the new album that we started, and we'll see if we can get a 2022 release for it.
Oh, wow. Now, the EP that just came out, it can they get it digitally as well as physical copies, or what's the deal with that?
Right now, it's just digital.
Okay.
Volume 1, Volume 2 will be digital, but if we can get things worked out, we're going to have a combination physical release in the fall with a couple extra tracks thrown in there.
Okay, well, Mick, as always, you're super busy. It's great talking to you. Thanks for doing this today. And like I said, we'll be doing part 2 of this maybe sometime in April. We can post that up in May. This interview will be going up in early April, so that's when people can hear us. Next time around, maybe if I get a chance to hear some of the songs off a new EP, we can talk more in detail about that, because I always love to promote what you guys are doing.
All right, man. That sounds great. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care, buddy. Bye-bye.